strong 10% week here on Bitcoin. The rotation is happening, and if you're not currently focused on this market, you could be missing a generational opportunity. In this video, I'm going to be explaining exactly what is going on, because there is a big fundamental shift happening, which if you do not understand, you are not informed enough to be in this crypto market. So I'm going to break that down. Big updates on what's going on with the Bitcoin ETF, big updates on the Ethereum ETFs, as well as long as also getting our PCE inflation figure later on this week. Loads going on here on Bitcoin. Of course, we did have a couple of weeks of pullback, and just like the nature of crypto, it always messes people up. Just when you guys are getting to peak panic, the market rotates, and this is why it's so important that you're able to separate your emotions from your investment decisions. I mean, Bitcoin here trying to move all the way up at the time to try attempt another all-time high, but then getting rejected. And it was at this point on a positive candle when Bitcoin was just shy of 70,000, I think it was 71.9k at this point, that I said, guys, we're going to get a double top pattern here, and we could be coming back into our EMA ribbon. Fast forward 4 weeks, you see we ended up with a big flush down candle going straight through the EMA ribbon as low here as 53,500. But then once you're in the EMA ribbon, what happens? And again, we spoke about in our videos, the dip gets bought. But more importantly than that, we're starting to see a bigger macro rotation, which I'm going to explain to you as well. You need to pay close attention to what's going on here in the traditional markets. Traditional markets are seeing a rotation across from big tech into smaller plays such as the Russell, some of the bigger blue chip stocks in the Dow Jones as well. So again, just to reiterate, when interest rates were going up, investors wanted to be in certain plays, right? They wanted to be in tech plays. They wanted to be in Nvidia and some of the AI plays, the semiconductor plays. They did great for those investors. But now there's a longer weighted rotation. Now the market understands that when, right, markets are basically saying, hey, July we're not getting a rate hike, but we expect one firmly in September, which by the way is a separate narrative, right? If we now don't get this rate cut, which 94% of the market expects in September, that could be some pain as well. But markets are expecting that rate cut. September the 18th, mark it in your diary, right? And that's why I made that video a couple of days ago saying, guys, you have 62 days. And already you've wasted a couple of those days. And in that video, I actually break down that you don't even have 62 days because people want to move their positions now. Right? They're not going to wait for September the 18th. It's too late by then. And already you're seeing over the last couple of days since I've made that video, Bitcoin has moved 10% this week, right? Hitting back here at the kind of 67K level. And that's really, really strong. The question now which we need to get into is this rotation enough for us to go hit all-time highs on Bitcoin, break through 73 and start heading our way towards the 90K price targets and the 100K price targets we had when we were originally here at the highs? That's what I'm going to break down. Hold up. Do you want to learn how to trade? Then you need to jump into our Telegram community. Link is in the description. In our Telegram community, I share my altcoins. I share how I do my trade setups, how I do my stop losses and take profit, so you could learn to become a profitable trader. Check it out. Link is in the description. So just to finish the point on the rotation, that rotation is happening now. People are going and thinking, hang on, when we get rate cuts, when we finally get that rate cut and the series of rate cuts ending this year and into next year, we want to be in plays in the broader market. We think there's going to be a rotation away from some of the obvious big cap tech plays and into some of these others. And what's interesting is it looks like early days that Bitcoin seems to be part of this rotation. And I'm going to point you to some of the evidence we're seeing from the ETF flow table as well. We've hit a record of 18.96 billion just coming into the BlackRock ETF alone. Right? This is data from the 2nd of July to the 19th of July. That's a net inflow of 18.9. Of course, Grayscale have been dumping. They dumped the equivalent amount of what we saw has gone into BlackRock, which is interesting, right? We kind of, when the ETFs were launched, we kind of theorized this. We said, hang on, a lot of people will be dumping GBTC, but don't fall for the FUD. You will see equivalent amounts coming into other ETFs because GBTC has a higher fee. Why would you leave your money somewhere where there's a higher fee? You're going to rotate to BlackRock or the Fidelity one or Wisdom Tree or the ARK ETF because you're going to get better fees. And I think the data's starting to back that up as well. So overall, the net inflows across the ETFs, including the outflow from GBTC, still see $17 billion cumulative net inflows into Bitcoin ETFs. And this is really, really important. I need people to understand this. The average person who's buying an ETF is a different profile to you and I watching this video. You and I watching this video, we want to buy some Bitcoin, we get ourselves on exchange, or we download, ourselves a wallet, and we go ahead and we buy some Bitcoin, right? Institutions, for various reasons, which we've gone into in other videos, they want exposure via an ETF, which is why the whole Bitcoin spot ETF narrative was so important over the last couple of years. But now we're seeing it come into fruition. Now, all of that theory, which we were saying, oh, an ETF is going to be good for crypto, and an ETF is going to be good for crypto, is really starting to come into fruition because now we're seeing the fruits of that labor, right? We're seeing that fundamentally institutions are actually using these ETFs to allocate some of their portfolio, not just into the Dow and the S&P and all the things they're used to, but now they can get a bit of exposure into Bitcoin. And finally, it's an option for them. So now, like we said, we're seeing a big rotation, right? And typically when we've had big rotations in the past, these big investors didn't have access to Bitcoin ETFs. Right? So when they were doing their rotations, they were like, okay, I want to rotate out some of these big tech plays. I don't want to hold Microsoft. I don't want to hold Apple. I don't want to hold Nvidia anymore. They've done really well for me. Let me book some profits. Let me go into some of the Russell plays. Let me go into some of the banks in the Dow. Let me go into some of the infrastructure plays. But now with the ETF, they got another option, right? Now they can go, hang on, why don't we just put a 1%, 2% of our portfolio in Bitcoin? Right? Because we've missed the previous bull markets. So investors are becoming savvy on this, and they're starting to speak to their, high net worth individual bank managers at the likes of BlackRock, at the likes of Goldman Sachs and the rest of them, JP Morgan. And now they're seeing Bitcoin as an option. And it's good to finally see that really coming into fruition. There's another interesting narrative over the last 24 to 36 hours, and that was this big CrowdStrike IT outage. I don't know if you guys have been following this, but over 8.5 million Windows devices were affected. There's a big outage, many companies affected. And the reason this is relevant for crypto is it was just another reminder that decentralized systems are really important. It just reminded the IT community and just businesses in general that, hang on, a lot of your systems, a lot of your processes are so heavily reliant on one guy sat in his office pressing an update in a company like CrowdStrike and then disappearing for a couple of hours. It's not on, right? And again, just kind of planting the seed in very important people's minds that decentralization, that crypto, that blockchain and ledger technology is the future. Even though maybe you're not ready to embrace it or completely move away from a CrowdStrike, at least it's going to be in their head. And I think that's important for the longer term crypto narrative as well. The other thing worth pointing out is we do have a big important PCE inflation figure coming out on Friday. We also get GDP this week as well. It's a preliminary reading for Q2. I will give you guys the updates in our Telegram community on Twitter and also on here as well. But mainly I want you guys to focus on Friday's PCE figure. We'll get the PCE inflation figures for June. And ultimately, this is the Fed's most important reading, right? The Fed prefer looking at PCE inflation. When they talk about getting to 2% inflation targets, they're referring to PCE inflation. Whenever they do their projections, they use PCE inflation. So I know we oftentimes want to focus on CPI. It's important to look at the PCE, and we'll get an update on that later this week. Remember, we had a good CPI reading, so we want to see that backed up by a good PCE reading as well, because that then further reiterates what the market believes, that we're going to get this rate cut. If we see a number which surprises or inflation still showing high next Friday, then don't be surprised to see this mindset kind of change. That being said, I don't think it'll be enough, unless it's a really horrible reading, to change this dynamic that I'm explaining to you, that investors want to rotate. Investors are rotating. You can see it very clearly. Just take a look at the NASDAQ and how that's starting to drop. Take a look at how the Dow Jones is now at records above 40,000, and the Russell has done really, really well over the last 10 days or so as well. So that rotation is fundamentally happening. Just take a look at this. Last week, we were sat at 33 on the Fear and Greed Index. Now, just a week on, you're talking about 74. right? This market is not messing around. It really wanted to bounce, and you're seeing that from the charts as well. I mean, just take a look at this. Big move into the EMA ribbon, big 8%, well, almost a 9% candle here on the weekly candle, and then another candle above it. The final chart I'm going to leave you guys with here on this video, just to wrap up, is the liquidity charts. I think these charts are super insightful and super useful for you guys to look at when you're trying to understand where the market could be heading next. Because if you take a look at this, just above my head here, look at the levels here. This dark yellow color over here indicates that there's a lot of leverage. Right now, look at this. There's about $17 billion worth of leverage around the 72.6K level here on Bitcoin. In other words, if Bitcoin could rally from where we're at now, around that 67, 68 mark, up towards just 72. So you're talking 4 or 5 grand on Bitcoin. You're liquidating 16, 17 billion dollars worth of overzealous shorts, right? Which is really important. Equally, if you wanted to move to the downside, if you were like a bear and saying, no, the price is going to move downside, we're going to go to 50,000. A big move all the way down to 50,000 only now liquidates 4 billion. In other words, all the liquidity was flushed down in this move to the downside. And when we monitored this at the time, when we were already sat here at 72, all the liquidity was below. All the incentives for the market makers was to liquidate prices by moving the price down. Get rid of the overzealous longs. Now it's the opposite. Now you can clearly see that all the liquidation, the serious liquidation, sits above here, right? $18 billion worth of liquidations around this 72K mark. So if you're a market maker, you're thinking, wait, I can put all the effort to move the Bitcoin price down to 50, and I'm only going to liquidate around, 5 billion, 6 billion, around that kind of price point, around 50K. The real liquidations, if you're looking at the downside, is coming down to these levels, right? Working Bitcoin price all the way down to 35,000, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. So you got to think about it from a market maker's point of view as well. Right now, the asymmetry, the bias sits with just moving up to 72.5 and taking the liquidity. Does that then mean we're going to create another all-time high and start working 80K, 90K? Not confirmed. But at least from here, the market makers have an incentive to go push that price action at least back to around this level where my cursor is. From there, we then have to do analysis to say, okay, strong move here on Bitcoin. We failed about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times at this level. We've been rejected. It's quite a serious resistance level. Is the 6th time going to be lucky? Will we finally break through it, retest, hold the new all-time high for a bit, and then work our way towards 1900? Again, the macro conditions are on our side. Right? If we can continue to get good data in terms of the in terms of the PCE inflation later on, if we can continue to get good jobs figures, if we keep seeing this rotation happening through the ETFs as well, who's to say Bitcoin can't break all-time highs pretty soon? One thing I am expecting is a lot of volatility. So if you guys want to trade that with me, I love volatility when I'm trading, jump into our Telegram community. ijazcrypto.com/TG. That's where I do my active trading. Over 200% spot returns. I don't leverage, right? I don't even short. I just take long trades on all coins, and I delivered over 200% last month in June. So definitely check that out. Links in description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.